Principal gave a broken violin to a poor student as a joke, but when he started to play, Professor Richard Thompson smirked disdainfully as he held the dusty violin in his hands. In the music room at Washington Public High School in Denver, the senior year students waited for the instruments to be handed out for their practical lesson. That's when his eyes landed on Ethan Mitchell, the 15-year-old boy who always sat at the back of the class. The thin boy, with messy brown hair and a worn-out uniform, kept his gaze down while his classmates received shiny violins. "Ethan Mitchell," called the principal, raising his voice so the whole class could hear. "Come get your instrument." The teenager stood up slowly, feeling the curious stares of his classmates. Richard lifted the broken violin high, displaying its snapped strings and peeling varnish. "This one is perfect for you," said the principal, letting out a laugh. "A special violin for a special student." A few chuckles echoed through the room. Ethan swallowed hard and reached out with trembling hands to take the instrument. The weight felt familiar, but something about that violin intrigued him. "Thank you, Professor," he murmured, examining the damaged instrument. "Oh, no need to thank me," Richard continued, playing to the audience. "I'm sure you'll make wonderful music with it. Right, everyone?" More laughter. Ethan's face burned with shame, but something strange happened when his fingers touched the remaining strings, a familiar sensation, as if he'd held that violin before. "Play something for us," ordered the principal, crossing his arms. "Let's hear what sound comes out of that relic." Ethan looked at the warped bow and took a deep breath. He positioned the violin on his shoulder and carefully drew the bow across the two strings that still worked. The sound that emerged stunned everyone. Pure, crystal-clear melody filled the room, silencing every laugh instantly. Ethan closed his eyes and let the music flow, adapting a song his mother used to sing to him when he was little. The principal felt his blood run cold. That melody. It was impossible. "Stop," he whispered, but Ethan kept playing. Teacher Jennifer, watching from the back of the room, discreetly pulled out her phone and began recording. 30 years teaching music, and she'd never seen anything like it. Ethan played as if the broken violin were a Stradivarius. Every note compensated for the instrument's limitations. Every bow movement drew out sounds that shouldn't exist on those worn-out strings. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Richard leaned against the desk, his legs weak. The melody Ethan was playing was Autumn Tears, the favorite song of his late wife, Catherine. She used to play it every Sunday morning before breakfast. "Where did you learn that song?" the principal asked, his voice hoarse. Ethan opened his eyes, still holding the violin. "My mother sang it to me when I was little. She said she learned it from a woman at the hospital where she worked." The room was utterly silent. The classmates who had laughed minutes earlier now stared at Ethan with a mix of awe and disbelief. "How can you play like that?" asked Amanda, one of the students in the front row. "I don't know how to explain it." Ethan lowered the violin. "It's always come naturally to me. My mum says I've been fiddling with anything that made sound since I was little." Richard stepped closer, his face pale. "That violin, have you seen it before?" "Never, Professor. But when I picked it up, it was like I already knew every note it could make." Teacher Jennifer approached, still holding her phone. "Ethan, have you ever had violin lessons?" "No, teacher. My mother always wanted to enroll me, but—" He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew Faith worked as a janitor at the same school to pay her son's tuition as a scholarship student. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. The students left whispering among themselves, but Ethan stayed behind, still holding the violin. "Can I take it home?" he asked timidly. Richard was lost in thought. That music, Catherine used to play it exactly the same way, with the same rhythm, the same passion. "You can keep it," he said without thinking. "It's no good for anything else anyway." Ethan smiled for the first time that day. "Thank you, Professor." When the boy left, Jennifer approached Richard. "Did you see what I saw?" "I did," Richard said heavily, sinking into his chair. "He plays just like your wife. I remember the performances she gave here at the school 10 years ago." Richard covered his face with his hands. Catherine had died in a car accident 3 years ago, and since then, he had become a bitter man. especially with students like Ethan, who reminded him of his own humble beginnings. Jennifer, where did we get that broken violin? It was a private donation years ago. It came with other instruments that were repaired and distributed. This one was stored away because it was beyond fixing. Who made the donation? I'll need to check the records. Why do you ask? Richard didn't answer. He left the music room with a strange feeling in his chest, as if ghosts from the past had come back to haunt him. Meanwhile, Ethan walked through the school halls with the violin under his arm. Other students whispered and pointed as he passed. "Hey, Ethan," called Robert, one of the boys who had laughed the most during class. "Dude, where'd you get that? That was amazing." "I don't know how to explain it," Ethan shrugged. "I've always had a knack for music. My dad owns an instrument shop. If you want, I can ask him to take a look at that violin." Ethan thanked him and kept walking. At the end of the hallway, he saw his mother organizing the cleaning supplies. Faith Mitchell was 42 but looked older. Hard work and worries had marked her face, but her brown eyes still lit up when she looked at her son. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart, what's that?" she asked, pointing at the violin. "Professor Richard gave it to me to practice. It's broken, but I managed to play it." Faith gently touched the instrument, and a strange expression crossed her face. "Ethan, what song did you play?" "The one you always used to sing. Autumn Tears." His mother stopped cleaning and stared at the violin. "Where did you learn the name of that song?" "You never told me?" Faith slowly shook her head. "Son, I never knew the name of that song. I only learned the melody by listening to a patient at the hospital." Ethan felt a chill. "What patient, Mom?" "A very sick woman. She was hospitalized at the place I worked before coming here. Every day she would hum that song, and I ended up memorizing it without meaning to." "What was her name?" "Catherine. Catherine Thompson." The violin nearly slipped from Ethan's hands. "Thompson, like the principal." Faith nodded sadly. "She was his wife. She was hospitalized for a long time after the accident. I cleaned her room." Ethan felt as if the pieces of a puzzle were falling into place. "Mom, Professor Richard acted really strange when I played. He asked where I learned the song. That's natural, son. It must have brought back painful memories for him." They walked in silence to the bus stop. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the principal's expression when he heard the music. At home in their small two-bedroom apartment in Hope Heights, Ethan went straight to his room. He sat on the bed and positioned the violin on his shoulder again. The sound came out clear and moving once more. Faith stopped preparing dinner and listened from the kitchen, tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, at Richard Thompson's house in the Cherry Creek neighborhood, the principal rummaged through drawers, searching for old photos. He found an album and opened it to the last pages. There was Catherine, smiling and holding her favorite violin, the same violin Ethan had played that day. "It can't be," he murmured to himself. He called Jennifer. "Jennifer, I need you to urgently check who donated that broken violin to the school." "Richard, it's almost 9 at night. Please, it's important." "All right, I'll go to the school first thing tomorrow and check." Richard couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Ethan playing Autumn Tears, exactly the way Catherine used to play it. The next morning, Ethan arrived early at school. He wanted to practice a little before classes started. He found the music room open and Jennifer organizing sheet music. "Good morning, ma'am." "Ethan, I'm glad you came early. Did you bring the violin?" "Yes. Can I practice a bit?" "Of course. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about yesterday." Ethan sat down and positioned the violin. "Principal Richard was deeply moved after you played. That song has a special meaning for him. My mom told me it was his wife's favorite piece. Your mother knew Mrs. Catherine. She took care of her at the hospital." Jennifer stopped organizing the sheet music. "Ethan, I found some interesting information about this violin. The donation was made 3 years ago, right after Mrs. Catherine passed away." "Who made the donation?" "That's the strange part. It was an elderly man, but he didn't leave his full name. He only signed as Professor Sebastian." Ethan began playing softly as they talked. The music filled the room again, and Jennifer felt the same emotion as the day before. "You have a rare gift, Ethan. It's as if the music flows naturally from you. It's always been like that. My mom says I stopped crying as a baby whenever I heard music. Would you like to enter a regional young talents competition? Applications are open. Ethan stopped playing. With this broken violin? The instrument doesn't matter. What matters is the talent, and you have plenty. At that moment, Richard appeared at the door. He looked like he hadn't slept well, with dark circles and a wrinkled suit. Ethan, can I speak with you? The boy lowered the violin, nervous. Of course, sir. Last night, I found out where this violin came from. It belonged to my wife. Ethan's heart raced. I didn't know, sir. If you want it back... No, Richard raised his hand. I want you to keep it. Even broken? Richard stepped closer and gently touched the instrument. My wife always said a violin only has value when it makes music. In your hands, even broken, it comes back to life. Ethan smiled shyly. Thank you, sir. Actually, I'm the one who should apologize. Yesterday, I tried to humiliate you in front of your classmates, and you turned my cruelty into something beautiful. Jennifer watched the scene, moved. Principal Richard, I was suggesting Ethan enter the regional competition. That's a great idea, Richard nodded. I can help with the application myself. Really? Ethan could hardly believe it. Really, but first, I'd like to meet your mother. She took care of Catherine in her last months, and I never had the chance to thank her. During recess, Ethan looked for his mother in the schoolyard. Mom, the principal wants to talk to you. Faith grew uneasy. What did I do wrong? Nothing, Mum. He found out that violin belonged to his wife and he wants to thank you for taking care of her. Faith smoothed her uniform nervously and followed Ethan to the principal's office. Richard Thompson stood to greet them, his expression far from its usual arrogance. Mrs. Faith, it's a pleasure. I'm Richard Thompson. Pleasure to meet you, Professor. I want to thank you for the care you showed my wife Catherine during her hospitalization. Faith lowered her eyes. I only did my job, Professor. No, ma'am. You did much more than that. Catherine spoke of a special nurse who hummed to her every night. That was you, wasn't it? Faith nodded, her eyes glistening. She was a very special person. Even in pain, she always had a smile for everyone. Did Catherine leave anything for you? A keepsake? No, Professor. She only taught me that song she always sang. Richard paused in thought. Mrs. Faith, your son has extraordinary talent. Ordinary how? So I'd like to help him develop it. How so? I'll enroll him in the regional young talent competition. If he qualifies, he could win a scholarship to a music school. Ethan and Faith exchanged disbelieving glances. Is that really possible? Faith asked. Not only possible, but likely. Ethan has a rare gift. But he only knows how to play with that broken violin. For now, Richard smiled, I'll arrange a proper instrument for the competition. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. That afternoon, Richard called a luthier friend in Chicago. Anthony, I need an urgent favor. There's a young talent here who needs a decent violin. Of course, Richard. What kind of instrument do you need? Something intermediate, but worthy of his talent. It's a special case. I can send a few models for you to evaluate. But tell me, what's so special about this boy? Richard glanced out the office window and saw Ethan in the courtyard, playing the broken violin for a group of mesmerized classmates. He plays as if he was born knowing how. And the strangest part, he's playing my late wife's violin. Catherine's violin, I thought you'd kept it. I donated it to the school but forgot. It was broken. I thought it was useless. Richard, you remember I knew Catherine. She had a very particular technique, a unique way of holding the bow. Yes, I remember. How does this boy play? Richard paused, realizing where the conversation was headed. Exactly like her. That's impossible unless... Unless what? Unless someone taught him that specific technique. Catherine learned from a very special teacher, Sebastian Morris, an old master from the traditional Brazilian school. The name echoed in Richard's mind. Professor Sebastian. The same name on the violin's donation. Anthony, is this Professor Sebastian still alive? No idea, he'd be over 80 if he is. Do you have any information about him? I can look into it. Why the interest? I have a feeling something bigger is happening here. That night, Ethan was practicing at home when there was a knock at the door. Faith opened it to find an elderly man with a cane and a gentle smile. Good evening, my dear. My name is Sebastian Morris. I've come to speak about the boy who plays the violin. Faith was confused. How did you know? Small town, my dear. News travels fast. May I come in? Ethan overheard and came to the living room, violin still in hand. Good evening, young man. So you're the Ethan playing Catherine's violin? You knew Mrs. Catherine? Sebastian smiled wistfully. Yes, I did. I was her teacher when she was young, taught her everything I knew about music. Ethan sat on the couch, fascinated. Was it you who donated the violin to the school? It was me. When Catherine passed, I felt the violin needed to make music again, and it seems it found the right hands. But how did you know I was playing? Professor Richard called me today. He's searching for answers just like you. Faith offered coffee to the visitor. Professor Sebastian, may I ask you something? Of course, my dear. Why does my son play just like Mrs. Catherine, even though he's never had lessons? Sebastian studied Ethan for a long moment. Some people are born with music in their soul. It's rare, but it happens. Ethan is one of them. But the technique, it's very specific. That's true, Sebastian nodded. The technique he's using is the same one I taught Catherine over 20 years ago. It's an old method, one few know today. Ethan played a few notes on the violin. Professor, how did I learn this? I don't know, my boy. Sometimes music finds a way to carry on through generations. Sebastian stayed late talking with the family. He shared stories about Catherine, the special technique she had developed, and how some students had a natural gift that went beyond traditional teaching. Ethan, may I give you some lessons? Free of charge, of course. Ethan's eyes lit up. Even with the broken violin? For now, yes, and soon you'll have a better instrument. How so? Professor Richard is arranging it. He wants you to compete in the regional contest. The next morning, the school was buzzing. News of Ethan's participation spread quickly among students and teachers. Dude, you're representing our school in the contest? Robert asked, impressed. Looks like it. Ethan still couldn't quite believe it. My dad knows a really good violin teacher. If you want, I can ask her to give you some tips. Thanks, but I'll be taking lessons with Professor Sebastian now. Who's that? He was the principal's wife's teacher, an old master. During music class, Jennifer gathered all the students. Everyone, I have news. Ethan will represent our school in the Young Talents Regional Competition. The room erupted in applause. Even the classmates who had laughed at him days before now showed genuine admiration. When's the competition? Amanda asked. 3 weeks from now, Jennifer replied. That's why Ethan will need all your support. Can we form a support group? Another student suggested. Great idea, Jennifer smiled. You can help Ethan prepare by being his practice audience. Ethan felt overwhelmed by all the attention, but also grateful for the unexpected support. After class, Richard called him aside. Ethan, Professor Sebastian called me last night. He'll be giving you private lessons. He already told me, Professor. I'm very grateful. There's something else you should know. Richard took a deep breath. I found out he was the one who donated Catherine's violin to the school. I know, he told me. But there's more. Sebastian was my wife's mentor. She always spoke of him as the teacher who changed her life. Ethan nodded, taking it in. Professor, may I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why did you become so different after your wife passed? Richard sat down, the weight of the question visible in his posture. Catherine was my light, Ethan. When she left, I lost myself. I became bitter, especially with students who reminded me of who I used to be. Who were you? Young, idealistic, full of dreams, just like you. Ethan reflected on the principal's words. Professor, I think Mrs. Catherine would have wanted you to be that way again. Richard smiled sadly. Maybe you're right. That afternoon, Ethan had his first lesson with Sebastian. The elderly professor arrived at the family's apartment with a folder full of old sheet music. Let's start with the basics, said Sebastian. I want to understand how you developed this technique naturally. Ethan picked up the violin and began playing Autumn Tears. Sebastian observed every movement, every finger position, every breath. Extraordinary, he murmured when Ethan finished. You replicate exactly the technique I taught Catherine. How is that possible? I don't know, my boy, but I'll teach you how to refine it. The lessons with Sebastian were eye-opening. The professor showed Ethan nuances of the technique he hadn't known, ways to draw even more emotion from the instrument. Music doesn't just come from the fingers, Sebastian explained. It comes from the soul, and you have a very old musical soul. What does that mean? It means you have a natural connection to music that few possess. It's a gift, but also a responsibility. During rehearsals, Ethan began attracting larger audiences. Students from other classes came to the music room to hear him play. I never thought our school had so much talent, commented the vice principal, Dr. Betty, after watching a rehearsal. Ethan is special, Jennifer agreed. It's like he was born to play. How's his progress for the competition? Excellent. Professor Sebastian is working with him, and Richard managed to borrow a violin for the performance. What a change in Richard, don't you think? Betty observed. Weeks ago he was arrogant and inflexible. Now he's dedicated to helping Ethan. Music has that power, Jennifer reflected. It transforms people. A week before the competition, Richard received an unexpected call. Professor Thompson, this is Anthony, the luthier. I have news about Professor Sebastian. Go ahead. He's a living legend of classical music. He trained dozens of great musicians in the 70s and 80s. Then he retired from formal teaching. Why did he retire? No one knows for sure. Some say he lost a very talented student in an accident, and it deeply affected him. Richard felt a chill. What kind of accident? A car crash. The student was young, very promising. Sebastian was never the same after that. Do you know the student's name? I don't remember, but I can look it up if you'd like. Please do. That night, Richard couldn't focus on anything. The coincidence of Sebastian losing a student in a car accident, just as he had lost Catherine, unsettled him. The next day, during Ethan's lesson, Richard watched Sebastian teach. The elderly professor had an almost fatherly dedication to the boy. Professor Sebastian, Richard called when the lesson ended. May I speak with you? Of course, my boy. They walked to the school courtyard. I've been thinking about your history as a teacher. Anthony, the luthier, told me you stopped teaching after losing a student. Sebastian stopped walking, his expression closing off. That was a long time ago. Was it a car accident? Yes. Sebastian's voice was barely audible. What was her name? Sebastian looked directly into Richard's eyes. Catherine Smith, before she married. The world seemed to stop for Richard. Catherine Smith, my wife. Your wife was Catherine Smith? Yes. She always spoke of a special teacher she had when she was young, but she never mentioned the name. Sebastian leaned on his cane, hands trembling. Catherine, she married you. Did you lose touch? After the first accident, when she was still young, she stopped playing for a while. I blamed myself for being too demanding, for pushing too hard. I stopped teaching and withdrew. Richard's legs felt weak. First accident? Yes. Catherine had an accident at 20, injured her right arm. It took months before she could play again. That's when I decided to stop teaching. I thought my obsession with perfection had put my students at risk. Professor, Catherine never blamed you for anything. She spoke of you fondly as someone who taught her to truly love music. Sebastian wiped a tear that rolled down his face. After the first accident, I promised myself I would never teach again, until I met Ethan. Why is Ethan different? Because he reminds me of her. The passion, the natural talent, the way music flows through him. Richard placed a hand on the elderly teacher's shoulder. Catherine would be happy to know you started teaching again because of Ethan. Do you think so? I'm sure of it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. On the eve of the competition, Ethan was nervous. He had rehearsed tirelessly, but the pressure of representing the school weighed heavily on his shoulders. Mom, what if I fail? Son, you've already achieved more than any of us imagined. Faith adjusted his uniform. No matter the result, I'm proud. Sebastian arrived for one last lesson. How are you feeling, Ethan? Nervous. That's normal. Even the great masters get nervous before performing. Professor, can I ask you something about Mrs. Catherine? Of course. What was she like at my age? Sebastian smiled nostalgically. Determined, talented, and a little stubborn, just like you. Do you think she would approve of what I'm doing? I'm certain she would. Catherine always believed music should be shared, not kept to oneself. And Professor Richard? How is he? Changed. Ethan, these past weeks, you haven't just developed your talent, you've helped a lost man rediscover his humanity. On the day of the competition, held at the Denver Performing Arts Center in Denver, Ethan arrived with Faith, Sebastian, Richard, and Jennifer. Several students from the school had also come to support him. Wow, this place is huge, Ethan said, awestruck by the theater. Don't let the size intimidate you, and Sebastian advised. Close your eyes and play as if you were at home. Richard carried the borrowed violin, an instrument far superior to the broken one Ethan had practiced with. Professor, what if I can't play well with this new violin? You'll do fine, Richard smiled. The talent is in you, not the instrument. The competition brought together young musicians from across the state. Ethan was one of the youngest participants, and certainly the only one who had learned music just a few weeks prior. Contestant number 15, Ethan Mitchell, they announced. The boy stepped onto the stage, his legs trembling. The audience was small, but to him it felt enormous. He positioned the violin on his shoulder and took a deep breath. For a moment, he thought of his mother, of Sebastian, of Richard, and especially of Catherine, someone he'd never met but whose presence he felt. He began to play Autumn Tears. The sound from the new violin was crystal clear, far superior to the broken one. Ethan lost himself in the music, forgetting where he was. In the audience, Richard wept silently. Sebastian smiled with pride. Faith could hardly believe it was her son on that stage. When Ethan finished, silence lingered for a few seconds before applause erupted. Some judges exchanged impressed glances. That was beautiful, son. Faith hugged him as he stepped off stage. Did I play well? You did, Sebastian embraced him. Catherine would be proud. The results would be announced later that evening. As they waited, Ethan chatted with other participants. Where do you study music? Asked a girl who had played the piano. Actually, I only started studying 3 weeks ago. Really? She looked incredulous. You play like you've been studying for years. I had good teachers. Ethan looked at Sebastian. At 5 in the afternoon, the results were announced. Ethan didn't place first but secured third place, earning a partial scholarship to study music in Denver. Third place? Shouted Amanda, who had come to cheer. Ethan got third. Richard hugged the boy with tears in his eyes. Congratulations, Ethan. You were extraordinary. Thank you for believing in me, Professor. Actually, I should be the one thanking you. You helped me rediscover the man I used to be. During the award ceremony, Ethan received his certificate and a small scholarship. It wasn't much, but it meant he could keep developing his talent. And now, Faith asked Sebastian, now Ethan will really study. He still has a lot to learn. What about you? Will you keep teaching? Sebastian watched Ethan accept his award. I think so. This boy reminded me why I became a teacher. On the way home, everyone went out to eat at a simple diner downtown. Ethan couldn't stop looking at his certificate. Mom, we did it. Yes, we did, son. Richard raised his soda. Her toast to Ethan, who taught us that talent knows no social class, and to Catherine, who keeps inspiring people even after she's gone. Everyone raised their glasses, moved. "Professor Richard," Ethan said, "you said Mrs. Catherine still inspires. What do you mean?" "She always believed music could change lives. You proved her right." Sebastian nodded. "Catherine used to say music was like a river. It might dry up for a while, but it always finds a way to flow again. And through Ethan, it's flowing again," Jennifer added. 2 weeks later, Ethan began classes at Denver's music school. The scholarship covered part of the tuition, and Richard offered to help with the rest. "Professor, I can't accept." "Of course you can. It's my way of honoring Catherine's memory." "But it's so much money." "Ethan, you gave me something far more valuable than money. You gave me hope again." At school, things changed too. Richard became a more understanding principal, especially toward students from humble backgrounds. He created a support program for scholarship students. "Professor," Robert said one day, "my dad wants to know if the school needs more musical instruments. He can donate some." "That would be wonderful, Robert. Let's put together a broader music program." "Was it Ethan's idea?" "Actually, it was mine. He inspired me." Ethan kept visiting Sebastian every week. The elderly teacher had decided to officially return to teaching, accepting a few special students. "Professor, do you regret stopping for so long?" "Sometimes, but I think everything has its time. If I hadn't stopped, maybe I wouldn't value teaching you as much." "And now? Will you take more students?" "A few, but you'll always be special. You're the one who brought me back to music." At home, Ethan still played Catherine's broken violin in his free time. Faith always stopped to listen. "Son, that broken violin has a beautiful story." "It does, Mom. It's like Mrs. Catherine left me a gift." "Or maybe you were the gift she left for Professor Richard." Ethan smiled and kept playing Autumn Tears, the song that had changed so many lives. At the end of the school year, the school held a special concert. Ethan was the main attraction, playing his new violin, but he insisted on keeping the broken one as a keepsake. "Why don't you get rid of the broken violin?" a classmate asked. "Because it started everything. It showed me talent doesn't depend on having the best instrument." On the night of the concert, the school auditorium was packed. Parents, students, teachers, and even local officials came to watch. Richard introduced Ethan. "This young man has taught us that music transcends social barriers, that talent can flourish in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes what we consider broken can produce the most beautiful music." Ethan stepped onto the stage and, to everyone's surprise, carried both violins. "Good evening," he said into the microphone. "I'll play 2 pieces tonight. The first with the violin I received when my life changed, and the second with the new violin I was given when my dreams became possible." First, he played a simplified version of Autumn Tears on the broken violin. The familiar sound moved the audience, especially Richard and Sebastian. Then, with the new violin, he performed a more complex piece he had learned at music school. "I'd like to dedicate this performance to 3 people," Ethan said at the end. "To Mrs. Catherine, who lent me her music, to Professor Sebastian, who taught me to refine it, and to Professor Richard, who gave me the chance to shine." The audience rose in applause. Richard stepped onto the stage and hugged Ethan. "Thank you for reminding me of the importance of believing in people," he said into the microphone. Sebastian was also called to the stage. "This boy taught me it's never too late to start over. At 82, I returned to teaching because of him." Faith wept in the audience, proud of her son and grateful for everyone who believed in him. After the concert, there was a small reception. Ethan mingled with the guests, still euphoric. "Ethan," called an elegant woman. "I'm Margaret Smith from the State Conservatory of Music. We'd like to talk about your future." "My future?" "We have a full scholarship for talented young musicians. Your performance tonight was exceptional." Ethan looked at Faith, Sebastian, and Richard, who had gathered nearby. "It's an incredible opportunity," said Sebastian. "Far better than anything I could offer, but I'd still like to keep studying with you too." "And you can. The conservatory allows assistant teachers." Richard smiled. "Ethan, your life is just beginning. Embrace every opportunity that comes your way." "And what about all of you? I'll miss everyone." "We're not going anywhere," Faith assured him. "We'll always be here for you." 3 months later, Ethan was officially enrolled at the conservatory, but continued living with his mother and taking extra lessons with Sebastian. Richard had transformed the school. The music program expanded, serving dozens of underprivileged students. Several volunteer teachers stepped forward to help. "How's Ethan doing?" Jennifer asked during a faculty meeting. "Wonderfully well. He's inspiring other students at the conservatory." "And how are you, Richard?" "Better than I've been in years. Ethan taught me that helping others is the best way to honor those we've lost." Sebastian had officially returned to teaching, accepting 5 special students. His home was once again filled with music. "Professor," Ethan said during a lesson, "do you feel fulfilled?" "I feel complete, Ethan. There was a void only music could fill." "And Mrs. Catherine, do you think she'd be happy?" "I'm certain she would. Catherine always said music was a gift meant to be shared." A year after the competition, Ethan was performing regularly at the city's cultural events. His story had become well known, inspiring other young people from humble backgrounds. "Ethan," a journalist said after a performance, "what would you say to young people who can't afford to study music? That talent has no price. If you have a passion for music, find a way to practice it. I started with a broken violin." "And what's your dream now?" "To keep studying and one day teach other kids like me. I want to give back everything I've received." Richard watched the interview from the teacher's lounge, filled with pride. "He's turning into such an admirable young man," Jennifer remarked. "Catherine would be so proud of him and of how everything has turned out." "Do you still miss her?" "I always will. But Ethan taught me that the best way to deal with longing is to turn it into something positive." Faith had been promoted at the school, leaving her job as a cleaner to work in the office. Richard had insisted on the promotion. "It's a way to recognize how much she's contributed to our school community," he explained to the district superintendent. "Through her son?" "Through the education she gave her son. Ethan reflects the values she taught him." At home, Ethan continued to play every night. The broken violin remained in his room, placed in a position of honor. "Mom, sometimes I feel like Mrs. Catherine is listening to me play." "Maybe she is, son. Good people leave marks that never fade." "I wish I could have met her." "You did meet her through music. It's a special way to know someone." Ethan reflected on his mother's words as he gently played the broken violin. Sebastian kept visiting the family regularly. He had become almost like a grandfather to Ethan. "Professor, do you have any regrets in life? Stopping teaching for so long, I lost precious years because of fear. But you found Ethan in the end." "That's true. Sometimes things happen at the right time, even when we think it's too late." During the school break, Ethan organized a benefit concert at the school to raise funds for more musical instruments. "I want other students to have the same opportunity I did," he explained to Richard. "That's a beautiful idea, Ethan. I can help organize it." "Actually, I wanted you to play with me." "Me, but I don't play anything." "Didn't Mrs. Catherine ever teach you piano?" Richard blushed. "She taught me a few basics, but..." "Then let's practice together. There's a simple piece we can play as a duet." The idea of Richard playing piano at the concert moved everyone. Sebastian offered to give him basic piano lessons. "It's strange being a student at 50, Richard commented during a lesson. "It's never too late to learn," Sebastian replied. "Ethan taught me that." The concert was a success. Ethan and Richard played an adapted version of Autumn Tears together, with violin and piano. "It was so moving to see you two play," Faith said afterward. "Mrs. Catherine would have been proud." "I felt like she was there," Richard admitted. "It was strange but comforting." The event raised enough money to buy 10 new musical instruments. Ethan made sure to help choose each one. "I want them to be good quality, so students enjoy playing them." 2 years later, Ethan was preparing to start college. He'd been accepted into the music program at the University of Colorado with a full scholarship. "I can hardly believe it," Faith said. "My son going to university." "He deserves it, Mom. He worked so hard to get here." Sebastian, now 84, still taught but with fewer students. "Ethan, when you graduate, I'd like you to take on some of my students." "It would be an honor, Professor." You have a gift for teaching. I saw it when you helped other students here at school." Ethan had started giving informal lessons to younger students in the school's music program, always supervised by Jennifer and Sebastian. Richard had become one of the most respected principals in the state system, known for his work in social inclusion through music. "Ethan didn't just change our school, he changed my entire perspective on education," Richard said during a lecture to other principals. "How so?" "I learned that our role isn't just to pass on knowledge, but to identify and nurture talents that are often hidden by socioeconomic limitations." The school's music program had become a model for other institutions. Several underprivileged students earned scholarships through the project. "This all started with Ethan and that broken violin," Jennifer remarked in a meeting. "And with the humanity he awakened in Richard," added Faith, who now attended meetings as a staff representative. In his senior year, Ethan was invited to play at graduation. "It's a tradition we've always had, but we've never had a musician as talented as him among our students," Richard explained. Ethan chose to play Autumn Tears on the broken violin. "Why?" the assistant principal asked. "You have a much better instrument now." "Because this song, with this violin, represents my journey. It started here, and I want it to end here." On graduation night, when Ethan stepped onto the stage with the broken violin, the entire school was moved. There stood the shy boy who, 3 years earlier, had been humiliated by the principal. Richard gave Ethan's final introduction. "This young man taught us that sometimes what seems broken can produce the most beautiful music. He transformed not only his own life, but all of ours." Ethan played Autumn Tears. One last time as a student. In the audience, Faith, Sebastian, Jennifer, and all the teachers wept with emotion. When he finished, Ethan approached the microphone. "I want to thank everyone who believed in me, especially Principal Richard, who taught me people can change, Professor Sebastian, who showed me music is a universal language, and my mother, who taught me dignity is priceless." The auditorium erupted in applause. Ethan stepped down and handed the broken violin to Richard. "Keep this for the next Ethan who comes along." "Are you sure?" "Yes. This violin has fulfilled its purpose with me. Now it needs to help someone else." Richard accepted it with trembling hands. "I'll keep it with care. And when you find someone who needs it, give it without hesitation." After graduation, Ethan prepared for college. Sebastian had decided it was time to step back further. "Ethan, you're ready to fly on your own. I'll never truly be alone. I carry all of you with me." That's how it should be. Teachers live through their students. Ethan graduated from university with honors, specializing in music education. His thesis focused on music's impact on social transformation. During his studies, he continued teaching at the school, helping other underprivileged youth discover musical talents. "It's amazing how he spots potential in students," said Jennifer, now the music program coordinator. "He's lived it. He knows hidden talent when he sees it," Richard replied. Faith retired as the school secretary, proud of her son's journey and her own professional growth. "Who'd have thought the janitor would become secretary?" she joked with a colleague. "You were always more than a janitor. Ethan just helped us see that." Sebastian passed away peacefully at home at 87, with Ethan by his side playing Autumn Tears on the broken violin. "Thank you for everything, Professor," he whispered. At the funeral, Ethan played one last song for his mentor. Denver's entire music community came to pay tribute. "Sebastian shaped generations of musicians," said the conservatory director, "but Ethan was his final and greatest legacy." Ethan inherited Sebastian's house, which the professor had left to him in his will, along with an impressive collection of old sheet music. "He wanted you to continue his work," the lawyer explained. In the house, Ethan found dozens of letters Sebastian had written to him over the years, but never delivered. One of them read, "Ethan, you taught me that music doesn't end when the musician stops playing. It keeps echoing through the people who were touched by it. Keep making the music echo." Ethan turned Sebastian's house into a free music school for underprivileged youth. Richard helped him with the bureaucratic side. "Catherine and Sebastian would be proud," Richard said at the inauguration. "They are proud," Ethan corrected. I feel their presence in every note I play. The school quickly became a benchmark for social music education. Students from all over the state came seeking opportunities. Ethan married at 28 to Lucy, an educator he met in college who shared his passion for social education. I want our children to grow up understanding the value of music, she said. And of the broken violin, Ethan added, smiling. The couple's first child, born 2 years later, was named Sebastian Ethan. The second, a girl, was named Catherine. They're fitting tributes, commented Faith, now a proud grandmother. Richard retired at 60 but kept visiting the school and volunteering in the music program. Ethan, do you know you completely changed my life? We changed each other's lives, Professor. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't given you that broken violin. Maybe someone else would have. Destiny always finds a way. On the music school's 20th anniversary, Ethan organized a grand commemorative concert. Former students came from across the country to participate. 20 years shaping musicians and transforming lives, he said in his opening speech. This all started with a broken violin and the generosity of people who believed in the power of music. The broken violin was displayed in an honor case at the school, alongside photos of Sebastian and Catherine. Why don't you fix the violin? A visitor once asked. Because it's perfect this way, Ethan replied. It teaches us we don't need to be perfect to create beautiful things. Ethan continued performing professionally, but his greatest passion was always teaching. In every new student, he saw potential for transformation. Professor Ethan, a 15-year-old student once asked, how do you see talent in everyone? Because I've learned talent isn't what you have, it's what you do with what you have. Even when it's not much. Especially when it's not much. That's how I started. Ethan's story and the broken violin became nationally known. Several documentaries were made about his social work through music. How does it feel to inspire so many people? A journalist once asked. It feels like a responsibility. Every student's success story is a way to honor those who believed in me. Ethan never forgot his roots. He continued living in the same neighborhood where he grew up, and his school primarily served local youth. Why don't you move to a better area? A friend once asked. Because this is where I can make a real difference. It's easy to help those far away. The hard part is transforming your own community. Faith, now 70, helped manage her son's school. Mom, do you regret anything? Only not believing in myself more when I was young. But you taught me it's never too late to grow. You've always been my greatest teacher. And you've always been my greatest lesson. He taught me that love and determination can overcome any limitation. At 40, Ethan was invited to speak at Congress about the role of music in public education. Music is not a luxury, he told the lawmakers. It's a necessity. It builds discipline, creativity, self-esteem, and citizenship. How can you prove that? Asked one representative. Look at the young people who graduate from our music schools. They become more aware citizens, more dedicated professionals, and more compassionate human beings. Ethan presented impressive statistics, showing reduced dropout rates and improved academic performance among students involved in music programs. Investing in music is investing in the future of our country, he concluded. His speech led to the creation of a national music education program, with Ethan as the lead consultant. I never imagined I'd come this far, he told Lucy after the program was approved. But you did, and it all started with a broken violin. And the courage to play even when it seemed impossible. Ethan expanded his school to other cities in Colorado, always prioritizing underprivileged youth. How do you maintain quality with so many locations? Asked a fellow educator. By training teachers who've lived experiences similar to their students, those who've faced hardships, understand those still struggling. Ethan's methodology became an international model. Educators from other countries visited the US to study his work. The secret is seeing potential where others see only limitations, he explained to a Japanese delegation. The broken violin remained the school's symbol. Ethan had replicas made for each new location. It's not the same violin, but it represents the same philosophy, he told new teachers. By Ethan's 50th birthday, his school had graduated over 5,000 students. Some became professional musicians, others pursued different careers, but all carried the lessons music had taught them. "Professor," said a former student who became a doctor, "the music I learned here helps me in my practice. I listen to my patients better." "Music teaches us to listen," Ethan replied. "It's a skill useful in any profession." Richard, now 80, still visited the school regularly. "Ethan, you know Catherine would be so proud of all this." "I hope so. I try to honor her memory every day. She always said music was immortal. Through you, she lives on." Ethan gazed at the broken violin in the display case. "Sometimes I feel her presence when I play." Maybe she is. Good people never truly leave us. On the last day of each year, Ethan would play Autumn Tears on the broken violin, alone in the school, as a way to give thanks for all he'd achieved. It was a personal ritual, a moment to reflect on the journey that began in humiliation and became his life's purpose. "Thank you, Mrs. Catherine," he always whispered when he finished. "Thank you, Professor Sebastian. Thank you, Professor Richard." And he always felt, somehow, they were listening. The end. Tell us in the comments what you thought of this inspiring story of perseverance. Do you believe music truly has the power to transform lives, as it did for Ethan? Share your own music experiences, and don't forget to like this video to support our channel. Your opinion means so much to us.